Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of our Pre-Symposium Panel. I'm so excited to dive in here to talk about how to find new ways to grow, how we're going about leading our teams as we're identifying new opportunities for growth for our business. So both growing our business from a business development standpoint, but also growing our teams as we work into these new growth opportunities, these new pivots, these new reorgs, any new changes that might be going on with our business. This is what we're here to talk about today. This is a lead up to our executive symposium that is happening on Thursday this week. So if you're a leader and you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I would love to meet other leaders in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'd love to connect with other executives and talk about this topic. Come, I'll post the link in the comments section on how to RSVP. We've got three great guests with us here today to talk about this topic. By the way, I'm Garrett Mintz. I am the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they are there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. So talking about how to find new ways to grow, I've got three great guests with us here today. Jennifer, do you mind just kicking us off with an intro?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Harris, the marketing director with Mindstream Analytics. We're a full service EPM CPM company, and we do implementations for NetSuite planning and budgeting. We're a preferred implementation partner with them, as well as being a diamond partner with OneStream Software. And we do many implementations with them as well.
Very cool. Craig, how about yourself?
I'm Craig Fisher. I live in Grapevine, Texas, which is outside of the Dallas area. And I'm the author of the new book, Hiring Humans. My company, TalentNet Media, helps employers to grow with funnel marketing, employer brand, process improvement, and tech stack enhancement. And then we also help HR tech companies scale and grow by introducing them to employers that need to add spot technology or upgrade their tech stack. We host a conference twice a year in Texas called TalentNet Live in the fall in Dallas, and the next one coming up on March 8th in Austin, Texas on the first day of South by Southwest.
Cool, thanks. And Taylor, how about you?
Guys, my name is Taylor. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm a senior accountant for EssilorLuxottica. EssilorLuxottica is one of the leading eyewear and sunglass brand in the world, and so I get the pleasure of working in their instruments department. So when you go to the optometrist and they're taking your vision, we produce all of those instruments as well as the eyewear that you get when you're done.
Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, let's dive in. So topic is how to find new ways to grow. So what I'd love to learn is just from your perspective, what have you found to be an effective way for identifying new growth opportunities when maybe the business is in transition? Maybe we see some economic changes happening, not necessarily bad, not necessarily good, but changes are going on. And we determine, okay, a pivot might be necessary for us to get to the next level. How did you go about determining that that pivot was necessary? What worked for you, and really more importantly also what didn't work for you? So have you ever been in a scenario where a pivot was made and then you had to backtrack that pivot because you're like, oopsies, we made a mistake? I'd love to learn about your experiences working through that process of pivoting, identifying opportunities for growth, being innovative and nimble, but at the same time keeping your people innovative and nimble. Because oftentimes if we say to our people, hey, we're going to make this new pivot, we're going to try this new thing, and then you do it and you're like, uh-oh, this didn't work out the way we wanted to, we're going to backtrack. It can potentially make your people numb, kind of like the boy who cried wolf, to new pivots. They don't want to put all their heart and energy and effort into it because they're like, gosh, well, they told me we were going to pivot last time. We tried it, didn't work. Like, do I put all my energy into this next one? So I would love to learn, what have you found to be an effective way for identifying opportunities for pivots, effectively communicating that to your team, and what mistakes did you make along the way? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. We actually had this situation arise so webinars are a massive way that we reach out to our customers. We show our value in our expertise with that. And so I've been, as the marketing director, I've been looking at ways that we can expand those efforts and utilize everything that we do with webinars, make them on demand for customers to view, make it so that we can send this out to customers or prospects. We did that this year by trying a new platform. It was a phenomenal concept to go into. We were creating an evergreen funnel, so that, not only do we have the live event, we also have the ability to immediately turn that into on-demand content that is hosted on our website. So you're not going to an external provider. However, the execution of that was not very well done by the company. And so it was making it very difficult for people to get into the webinars themselves and to access the content afterwards. So we have recently pivoted back to using another platform, but we saw a decrease in our webinar numbers. We were getting complaints and things about the platform, so we obviously had to move back and call that a little bit of a loss, but definitely a learning process.
Cool. I've got a lot of questions to follow up on that. But Craig and Taylor, when have you identified opportunities for pivoting? What worked? What didn't work? What were mistakes that you made along the way? How did you communicate that with the team?
Well, I can give an example. At the onset of COVID, we were hosting live events on a regular basis, and we had to pivot to online events, clearly. And so I was an early adopter of the Hopin platform. And you can host a virtual conference on Hopin. Hopin is the company that eventually acquired StreamYard. And because I was an early adopter, so A, this worked, and B, everyone else who was later to adopt that host conference in the recruiting industry, and even employers who were trying to host hiring events, ended up using my platform and paying me to produce their conferences online for a couple of years. What I did realize, though, was that there was fairly quickly sort of an online conference fatigue situation that happened when everybody started bugging out and wanting to get out of the house and get back in person. So as quickly as possible, I jumped off the virtual only events and got back in person. And it worked out great for me. I didn't ever go back to fully online, but I did realize that there was still a contingent, because online events are very profitable, right? Because there's very little overhead. And so now we do a lot of hybrid events, which is, just fantastic. But I mean, the reality is, listen to your audience and understand what's happening in the world.
And Craig, real quick, just so I can orientate myself, how many employees or team members do you have?
So I employ a fractional team. So we're all virtual. I have a certification course that certifies either HR or talent acquisition or recruiting people in recruiting operations and marketing, so that when they're onboarding with me to work on, I work on enterprise level projects, big companies, JP Morgan Chase, Toyota, JCPenney, big projects like that. So when they're onboarding with me, I can guarantee the employer that we're going to have a very highly trained, certified staff that are mostly former Deloitte or Accenture or even current, big consulting companies.
Craig, just to clarify, I was only asking that just from when you transition into online and then off of it, I'm curious to know, how was the communication process to your team? And it sounds like perhaps a lot of your team members were in this fractional nature where they were like, cool, if you want to go online, I'm ready to go online. Cool. If you want to go offline, I'm ready to go offline. But there wasn't as much people were like, oh my gosh, I've totally shipped my sail to this online thing. I don't know if I want to deviate from it. And, that whole process, because sometimes egos can come into play whenever we make pivots. And when people become accustomed to doing one thing one way really well, and then you're like, hey, we're not doing that anymore, it can be frustrating.
Yeah, so we didn't have any issues with that because my team's fractional. They're donating a certain number of hours a week or a month to either growth, sponsorship, sales, or working with employers as consultants. And so everybody wanted to stay in at that point anyway. So the virtual thing was fine.
Cool, 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 cool. And then Taylor, how about you? So what have you found to be like mistakes that you made in the pivot process, or how the company's gone about pivoting, and maybe it worked or maybe it didn't work? What were some of the things that you learned from that?
Yeah, so in accounting, I feel like just due to the nature of work, like we're always just like kind of online virtually. So I didn't have to have that transition of like from in person to like virtual. But I will say that one of the biggest like transitions that I've been a part of, just like an ERP system. And so an ERP system is not like a like 1 week thing, 1 month thing. It's like a very long process from beginning to end, and you learn so much along the way. There's so many. I would say there were so many mistakes made during the way, just because like when you're trying to transfer, financial data from one system to another, so many things get lost in transactions. And so I would just say that one of the biggest things that we learned is like to be like very diligent, to not rush the process, and however long it needs to take to like from beginning to end, allow it, because financials, that's a core part of your business. If your financials are messed up, then there's no way to navigate it going forward. So just being diligent in that transfer and just making sure the right systems are in place for both ends of like the new system and old system until it's completely transferred out. I would say like one of the most frustrating things is like when data get lost and you have to go back and like you have to try to make something up or put something in that position for a specific thing, and when I say specific thing, like meaning transaction, because it can be like anything, but it can be an impactful piece of the financials. And so those are like the parts that's like mind boggling, but it actually helps you grow because it's frustrating, but it's like, oh, now I know. So going forward, when we have this sorry, what's the word I'm trying to say? Transition. That
Yeah.
sorry. We won't be hung up in that thing that took us a week to figure out. And now it'll only take us 1 hour or, like a day.
Ooh, so Taylor and Jennifer, you both bring up this two sides of the coin here that I'm fascinated to jump in. So Jennifer, you've got a scenario of we attempted to make a pivot and we quickly pulled back, or we didn't quickly, we eventually pulled back. You mentioned there was bad execution. I'm very fascinated by that. But Taylor, you were mentioning that you were making a transition to a new ERP system and there was a lot of bumps on the way. And maybe a skittish executive team might have been like, we're going back to the old way of doing it. Versus your team saying, no, we're pushing through, we're making this happen. And so I'd be curious to know, how much of a role does the commitment of the executive team play into the execution of any new pivot? Yeah, I'd be curious to know, like, how like it, Jennifer, I'd be curious, in your scenario, was it kind of like you proposed or somebody proposed, hey, let's check out this new webinar system? And the executive team was like, all right, Jennifer, we're going to give you a little bit of budget. We'll give this a try. But honestly, if there's any adversity at all, even if it's my own fault, even if it's like a baby can't do it, we're going back to the old way. Is that, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but was there a little bit of that going on? And vice versa for Taylor, for you, was it like, hey, come hell or high water, we are going on this new ERP system, get all the data, round it up. We're burning the ships, no turning back. Like, what was that kind of like? What was the message from your exec? Like, how did that play a role into the effective transition into whatever things that were being tried?
Yeah, so I know for us, I always make sure that my executive team has complete buy-in on whatever I'm proposing before I start trying to execute it, of course. And so that was essential. However, and we gave this a really good shot. Honestly, I applaud my executive team because they are so patient. They were willing to try a few different things to see if we could get this webinar platform to work for us, because honestly, the webinar platform development team was willing to work with us and integrate, like create some some of the features to meet our needs, which they did. But then they started adding that to their super premium plan instead of the plan that we were already that we were already a member of. So, and then on top of that, there was just the constant accessing issue for our customers, which ultimately ended up being the reason that we pivoted back.
Got it. So it sounds like there was lack of transparency from the third party that you're working with, and around billing, but it was the accessibility that was like the actual implementation that people were struggling with. And yeah, I would imagine that, even to Taylor's point of, if I would imagine, and this is my assumption, but if it was only the lack of, or if it was only just like some accessibility issues, but everything else was transparent and good, and they were trying hard, perhaps the executive team would have been more patient. But it's like they're billing us more than what they said they would bill us. This is a little frustrating. And then all of a sudden, the thing's not working the way it's supposed to work. Then it's like, all right, pulling the plug.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it was honestly like a really quick, smooth transition back. So, and thankfully by that time, we pivoted back to using Zoom webinars, which they've added even more features. So it was a win for us to go back to that.
And Craig, I'd be curious to know, I would imagine like with the work that you do a lot of probably change management initiatives. I mean, you mentioned you work with a lot of really big companies, and just getting any change, especially at a bigger organization. It's like moving a giant cruise ship. It doesn't turn on a dime. What have you found to be effective in terms of getting that buy-in within the organization?
So usually a groundswell from the employee population helps a lot. I was a talent acquisition leader for a Fortune 500 tech company here in Dallas called CA Technologies. And they were previously computer associates. So Taylor, you may be familiar with some of the middleware that they built, CA11 and CA7 for financial transactions. And when they pivoted, it was because one of their founders actually went to jail for fraud, and so they had to pivot from Computer Associates to CA Technologies, and there was confusion in the talent market. It's like, is this California Technologies or what is this? What's this company? And so that's when they actually hired me to do an employer brand reset. And that was an executive decision. They said, we can't hire, that's going to sink us. How are we going to do this? And so what I did with my team was to get buy-in, to get employees to start telling their stories about what they love about the organization, what they think is cool about the brand, and posting those stories on places like Instagram and other places where we might reach technologists and kind of reset that brand image. But it wasn't too difficult once the employees started buying in to get money to kind of expand that operation, because we got so much free media and marketing and employee generated content that they're like, okay, that's worth about $300,000 in 3 months. Let's do more of that.
That's interesting. That's not what I would anticipate or would expect, but that's a fascinating use case. I think sometimes it's easy. Like sometimes what we'll see is you'll have companies where they'll do internal employee surveys, and it'll then take another 6 months for the data actually to get back. And then it's like, oh, well, it's not on a budgetary cycle when we got the data. So we got to wait another 8 months to get it on the budget to then implement things for those employees that now don't even work at the company anymore, because it's a full year and whatever month, 8 months after, the survey was actually completed and taken, for things that maybe will or won't work. And so it sounds like you were able to get a really quick buy-in from ground up, which is contrary to what I see a lot of organizations doing, where it's kind of, I don't know, you see a lot of people sitting at the high table on top, not necessarily listening to their team or their customers or the people that they serve. And then they're just saying, hey, I decree on Mount High, we are going in this direction. And then they do it, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but it's not really effective listening. And so it's cool that you leverage that to get the ground up employee, I guess, sentiment. I guess, Taylor, from your perspective, from a ground up employee sentiment, how, like, at your company, which is a pretty big company, like, what is your company's process for getting information from people on the ground level up to the senior ranks within the organization and seeing how change is enacted and implemented?
Ooh, that's a good question because I feel like because the company is so large, there's so many like subgroups. It's I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's like so many opinions where it's like how do you consolidate them into like generalized ideas to like make it make sense. But I will say my managers, they always are asking for feedback or anything that they can do to, make work better, experiences better of that nature. But I would say I don't have a lot of impact when it comes to like employees, like their relations or like how it grows because I'm just not in that space right now.
I'd be curious to know, because I think this plays into all of this right here. It's how do we go about effectively building trust in our communication from an executive level team throughout the organization? I think that's something that a lot of companies decree, or like they'll say it from the executive team, like, "Hey, we're working in this direction," but the buy-in from everybody else throughout the organization doesn't seem to be there. And oftentimes, sometimes what I'll see is even within like the middle management ranks within an organization, it becomes an us versus our own executive team because we think we're like they're sabotaging us, or there's something that's going on to like take us out at the knees. And so what have you found to be effective for effectively disseminating communication throughout an organization? So I guess in this case, internal marketing within our organization to get that true buy-in as to what direction should we move forward with and why should we change the way we behave so then we can follow this new vision. What have you found to be effective for that?
I know for me, I came into my current organization with, I would say, kind of definitely not any very much internal buy-in into helping with marketing. I think the biggest change that I kind of tried to make and make clear to people was I want them to be involved. Their expertise is what is important. They help make us what we are as a company. And, we're not just a brand. We are people that are in our work. They're the ones that interface with our customers on a daily basis. So their buy-in is essential, especially in marketing, because they become your individual marketers to everyone they meet. So I think that that's been a very much a shift internally that I've been trying to drive. And I do feel, for example, when I first came to this organization, they only had about 1,000 followers on LinkedIn, just through internal buy-in by all of our employees to share on social media, to comment and show interest in what was being um, put out on our socials, which was all of their content. So it increased. We're now at about 4,000 followers. So we've had quite a bit of growth. And we are now, I think we've gone from the bottom of the pack of our competitors to near the top as far as social media goes. So,
That's
yeah.
cool. Yeah. Craig, Taylor, I want to talk about trust and what role that plays in internal communication when getting buy-in into any new initiative, but also to Jennifer's point, like becoming an evangelist for the message. Like there's a big, like I feel like there's a big difference between like, okay, cool, I trust that this message comes from a good place and I think that this is in fact the right way to move, but then to actually transition into like I'm willing to post on my own social media, put my own reputation on the line for these new changes publicly. that's a different story, because sometimes some people are apprehensive about posting or that sort of thing, whether they're because maybe they don't post that often, or because maybe deep down inside they don't actually truly trust where the organization's going and they just leverage this job as a paycheck, or whatever it is in between. What have you, what is the, I guess, the difference between getting that trust factor of the communication to be like to stick, and then the evangelist like actually like really bought into this new change? What have you found to be effective in that?
Well, I can say that if you get results by posting things yourself first, you can prove things with data, right? So if you've got a good network and a good following, as any marketing professional maybe should, and that's just an example, recruiter, salesperson, you name it, you're public facing, that's kind of your job. So go out there and prove it yourself, right? Float the idea that this is what I really like about this organization and this is what's cool, and see what kind of results you get, right? If you can generate a lot of influence and likes and clicks and comments and whatever, make some waves, and do it consistently, then you can take that to management and say, listen, this message is resonating and I think we should do more of it. When we interviewed our employees at CA Technologies, we found that one of the cool things they thought about the company was the fact that we had pet benefits. Right? You get a day off to socialize with your new pet, or a day off for bereavement, and that request has to come through HR. So we knew when people were asking for that day off for new pet socialization, and we'd send them a bag of branded tchotchkes for their pet, right? A CA Technologies bandana and water dish, and put a little postcard in there that just said, hey, listen, if you're going to celebrate with your new pet, congratulations. We'd love to celebrate with you. Just tag us, hashtag life at CA, and we'll feature you and your pet on our Instagram page. And so thousands of employees all over the world started posting pictures of their pets with their CA swag. And it just proved the point with easy data and user generated content.
Yeah, we've done something similar. We did baby onesies, so that anybody who is having a new baby, their baby's wearing the onesie, and they take a picture of them and post on social media with us hashtagged, and it's worked.
I like that. I mean, so maybe let me transition the question a little bit, because like that sounds like a perk. It sounds like that. Will you be willing to take an extra day off of work so then you can adopt a dog? Like, yeah, I think most people are going to be pretty receptive to that. I'm not to say it's, not hard to get people to buy in to post on social media and tag the company and that sort of stuff. But
yeah, but that was already a benefit. It was the chicken before the egg there.
oh, got it. It's more of like a material change. So like Taylor, when your company says, hey, we're transitioning ERP systems, like how do they go about getting trust and become an evangelist, like buying for this? Because you probably, before the ERP system changes occurred, you're probably like, hey, the ERP system's fine. I got a lot of other challenges on my plate. Do we really need to make this the number one priority? Like, this is going to be really stressful. I might have to put in a lot of hours. I would imagine I imagine it was not easy to make that transition. How did the company go about getting your trust in this new system and really become an evangelist for it? Or maybe they didn't. I don't know. What were the things that they did well? What were things that they made mistakes on? Because sometimes I see big companies and they'll give a lot of corporate jargon like, we're committed to a seamless transition, and I don't know, stuff where it's like it falls on false ears and you're just like, dude, this did not land at all with the team. Or did they do something that like actually resonated with you? I'd be curious to know.
I would say when you work for a Fortune 500 company, you don't really have the capacity to say, do I trust this or not? It's more so of like, this is what's happening. And so you guys are just going to make the transition regardless of how you feel. And I think along the way, that's when you can develop, certain, connections with the transition to say like, maybe this is more effective for this particular process or things of that nature. But again, you don't have the time or, like that's too many people's opinions to say like, do we trust this or not? So it's like coming from, the top executives to say like, this is what the company needs. This is what we're going to do. So that's when the middle managers, come into play and to like really execute on this this big plan that we have. I would say like currently I'm actually dealing with that right now, and our company is like transitioning like 7 companies into our parent company. So it's a lot. It's super chaotic. And so I guess like one of my like quest I'm trying to figure out is like how to condense information where it's not information overload. Because when you have 7 different companies and you have to do 7 different closings for that company in a month, because in accounting, you know, you close the books, right? So we close the 7 companies and then we still have to close the parent company in which everything rolls into like in a consolidated matter. And so it's tough. I don't have the solution just yet for it, but I will say that as time goes and you know, you build your repertoire of just like kind of getting through those, closing those books, it becomes easier. And once everything is all said and done, it will be a breeze, but it is challenging up front. And those challenges are needed in order to get, you know, to the other side. So that way, you know, down the line, when we buy 20 more companies, you know, it'll be easier to train people instead of everyone trying to figure out how to do this one system. And I think that's the goal of like getting aligned, everyone becoming familiar with this so that, you know, in the future, we don't have all of this, you know, rah-rah everywhere when trying to transition the companies.
Can I ask Taylor a question real quick?
Yeah, jump in.
So Taylor, you said something really interesting about the number of people that have to be involved to make a decision.
Mhm.
And it feels like smaller project teams are always better than large project teams, which is the
Oh, for
default,
sure.
right?
Yes.
It's like there's going to be 5 teams that
Mhm.
are working on this, right? And the easier thing is for one small team to make the decision, then start building that out. So were you going from just the same ERP to an upgraded version of the same ERP, or were you completely going to a new system?
Completely new system. So I worked for 2 companies that did that. So they went from, you know, SAP to Oracle, and then the other one was SAP to Great Plains.
Mm-hmm.
But they were simultaneously still working on different systems, because when you work in consolidations, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the consolidation piece of accounting, like at the end,
Yeah.
you know, everyone wrote like all the financials rose up into this one system. And so there are always 2 systems for consolidations. I don't know why, but yes, it's a lot.
I owned a staffing firm that built project teams like
Mhm.
yours to implement and upgrade
Mhm.
ERP systems for both human resources and HRS and financials. And
Mhm.
so, A, you've got to deal with SAP or Oracle having a new version every year, or
Mhm.
B, you're going to go to a whole new thing because your corporation decided it's going to have a new partnership.
Yes.
Either way, it's a nightmare.
It is.
And
It is a nightmare. And I would say based on the amount of transactions you have to would like determine which system is best, because that's why they upgraded as well, because there were too many transactions for the old system. And so you like as you continuously grow in your companies, you need more efficient processes, because like too many transactions is too much manual work, and it takes up too much time.
Yeah, manual processes is one of the
Out the
biggest
door.
challenges. Yes, it is.
Did you feel that the executive team kind of like waved off this transition like if as if it was like no big deal? So when I think about it like this, I think about, do y'all ever watch The Office, the TV show? Okay, do
Yeah.
you know that scene where like Michael's on the forklift in like the warehouse area and he like knocks over multiple like things of paper and he's like, oh, it's okay, we'll get somebody to clean this up. And the people in the warehouse like, we're the ones who are going to clean this up, Michael. But the point is that like that it's a joke of sometimes you've got executive leadership that thinks like, oh, this activity is no big deal, we'll get someone to like go do it. And it's like, we're the ones who have to do it. Did you feel that your team almost because sometimes I see this as like an Offin challenge. It's like you got executives think like, oh, this is no big deal, you'll just transition naturally into this activity and everything will be fine. And you're like, it's not as easy as you think it is.
I would say they're actually really proud. They're so proud of the transition. I think one, just because of having the capacity to upgrade, that's something to be very proud of. But on the flip side of that, I don't think, because they're in the minute details of the work, that they don't think about, you know, how hard it can get sometimes when you're trying to transition everything. You have, 100,000 people trying to learn this new system, trying to make sure that their pieces of whatever they are working on is translated properly without any, mess up in the way. Yeah, I just think they're proud, and it's not until something big happens or something bad happens where they're like, oh my God. And that's when they're like, the red flags are going off to say like, oh, I need to get this. And that's when it becomes, a big issue for them. It's not until it's a red flag or it's a big deal, when, they're like, oh, what is this now? We need to pay attention to it. I don't think they think about it in the broad scheme. It's not until something comes up, just because they're like just so eager to roll this out, and they're thinking like, oh, once we get this, once we incorporate it, the accounting systems will be so much better. We have better data that we can, um, transition the company with. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that disconnect between the executive teams and the people actually doing the work, not being down there in the mud with you, making that transition is, yeah, that's one of the hardest things to go through.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the visionary versus like operations dilemma. It's like you got, a captain on a boat, and he or she's got binoculars, and they're like, we're gonna row into that direction. Everybody row. And they're like, I'm not rowing myself, but row, because this direction is where we're wanting to go. And everyone's like, okay.
Blindly rowing.
Yes.
Which is great for those ERP companies, because really they're going to give you their crappy software in the first place at almost nothing. What you're paying for is the consulting services.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And they love those problems. Hey, we can help. We're here. Only an extra $250,000.
Right. Now you have the whole accounting team taking a day to learn this particular piece of that, that they might only use for one time out the whole month. You know what I'm saying? So you're right. They are winning.
That's funny. That's great. Well, everybody, this was a good discussion. I really liked what we talked about in terms of just like internal buy-in, especially from a large corporate company perspective of just, okay, can we build trust through a communication funnel throughout the entire organization? And really how difficult it is to actually implement that. Because when you got hundreds of employees, sometimes people just want to feel heard, and you can't help everyone feel heard if you've got thousands of employees, tens of thousands of employees. It's too many people to like sit one by one and effectively do an interview. So it can become difficult. So not necessarily that we necessarily have solutions here, but it's great that we can acknowledge that. I think like part of leadership that's so hard is just the feeling of loneliness of like, am I here by myself going through this challenge, or do I have other people that can relate to what I'm going through? And I think what we have identified today is that, hey, this is a very relatable situation, and we're going through it too. Well, this was a great pre-symposium panel. Jennifer, Craig, Taylor, do you have any final things you'd like to share with our audience before we hop off for our pre-symposium panel today?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate both Craig and Taylor's perspectives. Craig, especially you as a marketing professional who deals with these major teams, you've given some really great insight. And Taylor, like for me, working for a finance implementer, a financial software systems implementer, it is always nice to kind of get that feeling from customers, or someone who is going through that terrible transition, to know and make us think about ways that we can make that transition easier for you.
So I'd love to say thank you to all of you, and always appreciate hearing all these interesting perspectives, and just know that change is constant, change is expected. That's our jobs, and you all seem to be doing it very well and handling everything great. Happy holidays.
Very nice. Taylor, any final thoughts that you want to share?
I would just say, like, thank you guys for sharing the stage with me today. Thanks for having me, Garrett. I would say, just like to wrap it all up, just do the work. It's hard. It gets boring. But you have to do the work. And on the other side, like success is inevitable. So, just do the work, hang in there, and just stick it out because, like you said, change is constant. So it's always going. And you just have to build that, high emotional intelligence to like not get so down to say, like, it's just part of the process. This doesn't define me. This doesn't define the company. This is just a process we have to get through to get to the other side of where we truly want to be. So I am excited for you guys, and I would love to connect after this, via LinkedIn, social medias, and at the event on Thursday, if you guys are attending.
Yo, everybody here. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, gosh, I want to meet Jennifer, Craig, and Taylor, come to the Executive Symposium on Thursday. I'll post in the comment section the RSVP link. We'd love to see you there. We're going to talk about how to find new ways to grow. We've got a lot of great things to discuss, 5 to 8 p.m. in Carrollton. Everybody, thanks for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank